Humans have a very simple, lizard-brain solution to an incredibly complex societal problem. When a member of our species breaks the rules, we instinctively want to hurt them. And since we evolved past the whole throwing rocks in the town square phase of civilization, we settled on the next best thing. We build a tiny windowless metal box, we shove the bad guy inside it, and we lock the door. We call it justice, but if you actually look at the data, if you strip away the emotional desire for revenge and just look at the raw, undeniable metrics of what happens when you put a human being in a concrete cage, you quickly realize something terrifying. Our system isn't designed to fix crime. It is a multi-billion-dollar machine perfectly optimized to create better criminals. Let us take a hard, uncomfortable look at the United States. The land of the free currently holds the undisputed heavyweight title for locking up its own citizens. The U.S. makes up roughly 5% of the global population, but it houses nearly 20% of the world's prisoners. It is an absolute mammoth of an industry, a sprawling $80 billion labyrinth of barbed wire, concrete blocks, and heavily armed guards. When you look at the American penal system, it operates on a philosophy that we can politely call the stupid system. I do not mean that as an insult to the people working in it. I mean it from a purely logical, data-driven perspective. The definition of stupidity is doing the exact same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And oh boy, does the U.S. love doing the same thing. The American prison is built entirely around the concept of punitive suffering. The environment is actively designed to be as psychologically and physically hostile as legally permissible. The food is technically edible sludge. The noise is a constant echoing nightmare of slamming steel and yelling. Violence is not just common, it is practically the local currency. And if you step out of line, we throw you into solitary confinement, a practice that the United Nations has openly classified as psychological torture. You are locked in a room the size of a parking space for 23 hours a day, with nothing but your own deteriorating thoughts. The societal logic here is simple, right? If the punishment is horrific enough, the criminal will be too terrified to ever break the law again. It is a deterrence model based entirely on fear. But let's look at the actual return on our $80 billion investment. What happens when these people finish their sentences and walk back out into the world? Within 5 years of release, over 70% of inmates in the U.S. are arrested again. 70%. If you bought a washing machine and 7 out of 10 times you used it, it violently set your laundry on fire, you would not buy that washing machine again. You would demand a refund. But with prisons, we just keep building more of them. We take an 18-year-old kid who made a terrible, illegal mistake. We lock him in a concrete gladiator arena surrounded by hardened, violent offenders for 5 years. We strip away his humanity, his empathy, and his ability to function in a normal society. And then we open the gates, hand him a $20 bill, and say, "Good luck getting a job with a felony record. Please don't do any more crimes." It is an absolute failure of logic. The American prison isn't a correctional facility, it is a publicly funded networking event for cartels and gangs. Now, I want you to wipe that grim image from your mind and look at a system that actually pays attention to the data. Let's look at the SMART system. Let's fly to Norway. When an American sees a Norwegian prison for the first time, their brain practically reboots. It genuinely looks like a trick. It looks like a liberal arts college campus crossed with a Scandinavian furniture catalog. Take Halden Prison, often called the most humane maximum security prison in the world. The buildings are surrounded by pine trees and blueberry woods. The cells, and I use that word loosely, look like decent college dorm rooms. They have unbarred windows letting in natural sunlight. They have flat-screen televisions. They have mini fridges and en-suite bathrooms. If you walk into the communal areas, you will see something that would cause an American prison warden to have an immediate panic attack. Prisoners cooking their own meals using actual, sharp, stainless steel kitchen knives. You will see guards, who by the way are completely unarmed, playing video games, drinking coffee, and playing basketball alongside the murderers and drug smugglers they are guarding. It sounds like a joke. It sounds incredibly soft. It sounds like an insult to the victims of these crimes. Why on earth are we rewarding terrible people with a relaxing woodland retreat? Because the Norwegians figured out a very dark, very practical secret of the system. Almost every single person you lock up is eventually going to get out. Unless you are giving everyone a life sentence, these prisoners are going to be your neighbors again. They are going to be standing behind you in line at the grocery store. They are going to be walking down the same street as your kids. So, Norway asks a very cold, logical question. When that guy gets out, do you want him to be a deeply traumatized, hyper-violent, angry animal who has spent the last 10 years fighting for his life in a cage? Or do you want him to be a functioning, relatively boring guy who knows how to budget his groceries, fix a bicycle, and regulate his own emotions? Norway's philosophy is called the principle of normality. The punishment is simply the restriction of liberty. The fact that you cannot leave the island or the compound is the punishment. Everything else inside the walls is explicitly designed to mimic normal, healthy society as closely as humanly possible. They don't wear orange jumpsuits. They wear their own clothes. They work daily jobs. They go to school. The guards are trained for years in social work, psychology, and conflict resolution, not just crowd control. Their job isn't to punish the inmates, their job is to rehabilitate them, to fix the broken machinery in their heads that caused them to commit the crime in the first place. And here is where the soft approach becomes the most ruthlessly efficient, logically sound system on the planet. Norway's recidivism rate, the number of people who go back to a life of crime after getting out, is around 20%, one of the lowest on the face of the earth. Compare that to the United States' 70%. Yes, a cell in Halden costs more per year than a cell in a U.S. supermax. But how much does it cost society when a criminal gets out and immediately robs 3 more stores, shoots somebody, goes through the entire multi-million-dollar court process again, and goes back to prison for another 20 years? The financial cost of the stupid system is staggering. The human cost is immeasurable. We are addicted to the emotion of punishment. We desperately want the bad guy to suffer because it makes us feel a fleeting sense of moral balancing. But that emotion is bankrupting our cities and making our streets exponentially more dangerous. Norway swallowed its pride, ignored the desire for revenge, and built a system based purely on what actually works. They treat prisoners like human beings, not because the prisoners necessarily deserve it, but because society deserves a system that actually solves the problem. The next time you hear a politician screaming about being tough on crime, ask yourself, do you want a system that looks tough on a campaign poster, or do you want a system that actually stops you from getting mugged?